Conversations have the power to change perspectives, challenge norms, and sometimes even change lives. But what about the ones we are taught to stay silent about?
Welcome to TED-a-Tete, the podcast initiative of TEDxRCC where ideas meet conversation and conversation spark change.
Today, we are in conversation with someone who is working to change exactly that by creating spaces where difficult, often avoided conversations can finally take place.
She is a 23-year-old youth change maker, content creator with over 90,000 followers, an environmentalist, and someone who has spoken across 100 plus events. Now, at just 23, she has already built a global youth movement recognized as one of Asia's 100 Women Power Leaders 2023. She is Business World Wellbeing's 30 Under 30 2023. We are honored to welcome Ms. Palakh Khanna.
Ma'am, thank you so much for being here with us today. To start, beyond all the awards and allocates, how would you introduce yourself to someone you have never met or someone who doesn't know who Miss Palak is? So, how will you introduce yourself to them?
Okay, thank you so much for having me, firstly. And wonderful to also see conversations like these happening. So, thank you. I think beyond recognitions, I would say hi, I am Palak. I am a 23-year-old. An introvert transitioned into a speaker. I run my own nonprofit that works to literally and essentially break the ice about conversations that matter but often get ignored. Yes, landed up here creating conversations, spaces, and safe spaces for people to genuinely express around anything and everything which has often been categorized as stigma or simply conversations and topics which are important but lesser known. So, across gender, mental health, menstruation, climate, sustainability, all of that. And yeah, that's the work that I do. Also create content on LinkedIn, have a community of 90,000 plus individuals on the platform. And yes, that's me.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. You said that you wanted to change at when you were 10 years old. That's quite an early age to feel that sense of responsibility. Where did that come from?
Okay. I think when I was really, really young, like I said, I was a massive introvert. So, very awkward in small talk, very small group of friends. But the one thing that I was very passionate about was working towards the environment. And how did that come across? I was very young, again, 9, 10 years old, when I happened to join my school's environment club. And when I became a part of the club, I was passionate about the environment, but we ended up becoming a part of a protest when trees were getting cut out of the from outside the school, and we were protesting against it. And that was kind of the moment when I felt I really want to work in this space. I want to work in environment. I want to work for climate change. And yes, that was the starting point, kind of the moment where I felt this is, my passion and my purpose. But because I was so awkward talking to people and I never really realized, how important it is to utilize that voice, it really didn't take shape for very, very long. So it was a passion. It was something that I was deeply passionate about and I wanted to work on. But because of that awkwardness, because of being an introvert, I didn't really pick on it. It was really later when I actually opened my nonprofit and we also started talking about climate change that I felt, okay, this is a full circle because it's getting, it's becoming a part of the work that I do.
So, ma'am, as you just said that you are an introvert and you describe yourself who was a huge introvert since your childhood, but now you are a TEDx speaker, you are a Joe Talk speaker who addressed thousands of people at one time. So, what did happen in between? How this transition took place from being an introvert to addressing so many people?
I think a lot happened in between. And sometimes even I think of, because a lot of times when my school friends meet me or people who have known me, earlier, they're like, you've truly changed a lot. And, the conversation we were having off camera as well. It's just when I started out, I realized that if I want to talk about stigmas and if I want to break the ice literally about conversations lesser talked about, I have to step out of my own comfort zone as well, right? Because if I'm awkward with small talk, how will I break the ice about such important topics? And yeah, it kind of started from there. And I felt, okay, I'll take one step a day to actually break that own barrier that I've set for myself. And this was again when I was in a decently a decent introvert. And why I'm saying that is I was not someone who could, instantly switch to that I'm an ambivert and I can talk to people who I'm comfortable with. I was in that space of being an introvert. And yeah, I set out goals for myself. I had set out a task for myself that I still kind of follow, which is to talk to 5 new people every week. And yeah, that was a simple task. Whether I talk to them online, whether I talk to them offline, whether I just reach out to them and wait for the conversation to happen, that was the task I set out for myself. That I'll kind of step out of my comfort zone. Carved out from there. Started writing content on LinkedIn again from the very purpose of I want to meet like-minded people, but maybe I don't want to be on platforms because I wanted to do text-only platforms because it's slightly less vulnerable, right? You'll understand if you're someone who's kind of awkward to be amongst people. You're like, okay, this is the first stepping stone to generally sharing my voice and my words. So yeah, landed up on LinkedIn and gradually realized, yes, that voice is very valuable to people. Because the Gen Z voice is definitely valuable. We bring a very different lens to a lot of conversations. And yeah, it carved out from there, went on to speak on platforms. And I realized, okay, maybe I do enjoy talking. It was much more about getting out of that comfort zone. And yes, that's how it happened.
For those who don't know, Break the Ice is a youth led non profit with volunteers across India and across boundaries that works to open conversations around topics society shies away from: mental health, gender, menstruation, climate change. What does it actually mean to break the ice about a taboo topic?
Okay. So I think most of the people who might be listening may not know the backstory. This is September 2021, so COVID. I happened to overhear a conversation between my mom and my domestic help. My domestic help, she'd had her periods at our place, but she was very, very uncomfortable asking for pads. And in a very hesitant, almost whisper, she was trying to convey to my mom. And I had happened to overhear that conversation. And that was kind of, I would say, the aha moment when I kind of realized that we definitely need to work towards this. And I told my mom, we are privileged in the way that we have access to resources and education, right? Most people may not. And the very reason such an important conversation and process like periods is stigmatized is because it's getting carried on from generations, right? So how do we make sure that at least we're able to break that barrier and break the ice about it not continuing forward as a stigma? I get it. It has been a stigma. So we might not be able to do anything about that. But how do we make sure it doesn't continue forward as a stigma? And yeah, it started from there. We started from the conversation around periods, around menstruation. And when more and more young people joined in, we realized there are so many other stigmas. Whether that's mental health, whether that's gender, whether that's climate, whether it's sustainability, or something as simple as young people being in spaces in decision making places, right? So, in a sense, youth empowerment. Even though it might not be a stigma from that lens, but it's definitely a lesser talked about conversation and something we need to work on. So yes, we gradually expanded to from menstruation to menstruation, mental health, gender, climate, sustainability, and anything and everything also related to young people, because we are a for and by young people organization. Okay, lovely question. I think, of course, at a first lens, breaking the ice means starting a conversation, right? And when it's about what we realized is when it's about a taboo topic, it's not just about starting a conversation, it's about building that safe space. Like we were having a conversation. It's so important to have a safe space for people to actually talk about anything which has often been categorized as a stigma. Why? Because people are suddenly saying, but why are we talking about this if it's not been talked about, right? So to actually have a foot in the door, what's important is not just to start that conversation, to kind of be like, this is a safe space, this is a non-judgmental space, share what you want to, and kind of acknowledge. And many a times breaking the ice is also that moment of the person acknowledging that feeling many a times for the first time. And that's the very subtle nuance we've kind of understood throughout, that suddenly in one of our events around mental health, someone will say, oh my god, I never realized this is a mental health challenge, and this is a challenge I was facing, and now I know what I need to do. I need to step back and maybe seek that professional help, or anything, take a step back and genuinely introspect. So yeah, breaking the ice is a lot about starting that conversation, building that safe space where people can genuinely come, acknowledge that feeling, even if it means for the first time, and also making sure that that safe space is also non-judgmental, because we've realized that goes hand in hand. Nobody will feel comfortable enough to share their experiences if they have that fear of judgment, that there are other people in this room who might be judging us.
So, you have spoken about building global safe space for young people, but spaces are not so easy to build. We can see that it is one of the really big challenges. So, how would you overcome it and making this truly inclusive?
That's a great question, and I think that's something we've been working on again for all the time that we've been working at. Um, like I said, I won't say it's a challenge. It's more of some things we need to focus on to make sure that, again, the conversation is as inclusive and also as meaningful. It's not very surface level. And like I mentioned in the previous question, the first thing would be that that safe space is accompanied by a non-judgmental space. कि अगर आप इस space में आ रहे हैं and you are openly sharing your opinions and your ideas and your suggestions and your experiences, you don't feel that fear of judgment, because all the other people in this room might be facing the very same thing, right? You might share a very personal experience and suddenly have 5 more people saying, hey, I face the same thing. And that's the safe space we're talking about. So what do you need to focus on, and what we also focus on is, number one, safe space के साथ एक non-judgmental space create हो जितनी भी possible है, right? Of course, we don't have 100% the it in hand ki it will be as non-judgmental, but more or less a safe space for you to share your ideas. And the second thing, again, not a challenge, something we wanted to focus on, and we've kind of, again, we are also in the phase of learning, but this is something we realized over time ki while the space will be an open, safe space for you to share opinions, it also has to be a very responsible space. So openness with responsibility. Why? Because we don't want that space to be unmoderated or triggering or overwhelming for anyone, right? Because आप sensitive topics के बारे में बात कर रहे हो, it's very important कि safe space के साथ वो एक बहुत ही responsible space भी हो. And again, because we are hosting those events, we are trying to create those break the ice moments, we have to make sure that that responsibility is on us and by us. So not a challenge, more of some things we realized over time and we thought we have to include this, and again, learning along the way. But that's been a very important focus key. How do we make sure this space is decently moderated, ki freedom hai to share your opinions, but it's not triggering to anyone, it's not overwhelming that someone feels, oh my god, this is so heavy, right? So taking that treading that balance as well.
So, ma'am, at just 18, while many of us were just figuring out what to do in life, you were already there building a team across 10 plus countries and reached over 15,000 people. So, I wanted to ask you, what was your day like that during that phase? What were your day to day activities? How did you manage all these things, along with, of course, your studies and your future career building and doing all these tasks also? It might have been overwhelming also for you sometimes. So, please share your basically daily routine during that phase.
Firstly, I don't think any of us have anything figured out. So trust me, all of us are in that process, and it becomes a sort of mindset ki inka to life looks very sorted out, but of course, all of us have our own moments of, again, overwhelming feeling ki oh my god, so much is happening, and are we following the path and the purpose we want to? But since you said, when I started out, so like I was saying, I started out during COVID. So the very first thing was itni uncertainty there was, not just through our own lives, right, at a global lens. So in that time of uncertainty, just figuring out everything was very, very difficult. And on top of that, like I said, because we were working on unconventional topics, just really finding that foot in the door and starting those conversations was also challenging. And like you were mentioning, because we had, and we of course still do, we have volunteers across boundaries as well, balancing that, that cultural conversation, that intercultural conversation, because a lot of stigmas are interpreted very differently in different cultures. Some stigmas might be more prominent in our country, in some neighboring countries, and while others, it might be a more natural conversation. So when, young people from across different countries join in, you have to kind of balance that also. Ki culturally, we are taking you together with us, and we're kind of breaking those conversations and breaking the ice around them through every culture's lens, right? So yes, when we started out, that was, again, not a challenge, but something we took a lot of time to figure out ki how do we make sure it's inclusive from a cultural lens, from a age lens, from a gender lens, from a community lens, all of that. And of course, I was a student. A lot of the people in our team were students. So just balancing that was overwhelming a lot of times. But also, again, because you're in that path of impact, it's fun to also balance. So the balancing is in itself very fun because you'll feel, oh my god, I have to study, I have to do this event, I also have to see what the impact is. But when you see smaller moments of success happening, and I mean smaller as in someone during the event saying this was so good, this really opened my eyes, that's when you kind of feel ki, okay, this was worth it. Finding that balance is worth it because this is rewarding in a different way, right? So I think balancing was fun, also a bit overwhelming, but when I look back, it was great.
Fun to balance is the thing which I'll keep in mind from now on.
Okay, so India has deeply rooted stigmas around these many topics, like as you mentioned. So, have you ever faced backlash while addressing them, and matlab, how would you deal with them?
Not backlash. I think for us when we started out, like I was saying, right, there was a lot of hesitancy. Again, because the first question that people will ask is, why are we talking about this if it's not supposed to be talked about? Right? Because that's the mindset we are breaking. So, very ironically, that's also the counter that comes. Why are we talking about this if it's not supposed to be talked about? And emphasis on supposed to, right? So it was not a backlash, it was more of that hesitancy that we had to kind of break. And of course, because stigmas also exist because of a lack of awareness, wo wali conversation is very very different. Because suddenly if you introduce something new to someone, the first response is, why are we talking about it if we've never talked about it before? And second is, what all do I need to know about this, right? If suddenly someone throws mental health to someone who's never heard about it, they're like, what is this all about? So us curiosity ke sath, the challenge that comes to us is, how do we take it very cautiously and very responsibly, right? We're not sharing just one side to it because that leads to misinformation. How do we make sure we're sharing all kinds of information, all kinds of lenses, all kinds of lived experiences while being responsible to it? So, I think that was the initial stage of ki hesitancy ko kaise break kare. How do we, again, a foot in the door on how do we start those conversations and then we build them. Ki maybe this was lack of awareness, maybe it's been a stigma because there is misinformation, maybe there is overgeneralization. That's also a conversation, and I'd love to talk about it maybe, later during our conversation, ki overgeneralization se bhi stigmas hote. Because there's this mindset on, I know this much about this conversation, this much has been shared to everyone, for example, on social media or on platforms. So this is all that we need to know about it, right? So that overgeneralization also creates not just stigmas, but also that conditioning that this conversation is supposed to be like this. So yeah, initial stage was that.
So, ma'am, you are a four-time TEDx speaker and you have spoken about all these topics at various other platforms also. So, at a personal level, how do you prepare yourself to talk about such topics when the society and other people even hesitate to mention or discuss about those topics, and you are giving talks on that? So, it needs a lot of courage and mental strength at a personal level to you. So, how do you manage that and prepare for that?
Wow. Great question. See, the thing is that you have to kind of, because I also create content and I've also realized that the first step to sharing anything, any topic, any conversation, any talk, anything, right? And stigmas though are very, very different. The first thing is ki you have to always share your experiences. And since you were saying, how do you do those talks? Very similar to this. Whenever you're talking about stigmas, what we also do at Break the Ice is to make sure कि वो conversation, it starts from an experience or a personal experience, because what we've realized is storytelling is much more important than just carrying conversations forward through statistics, right? सिर्फ data दोगे तो people are not connected to it that much. When you share those stories, those lived experiences, वहाँ से there's a sense of relatability. There's a sense of, oh my god, I've also faced this, right? So yeah, I think start from the storytelling aspect. Keep it as real as possible. Trust me, people can identify if it's not real. So if someone is wanting to work in the space of social impact, if you're wanting to, again, even if you want to speak to people, right, on stages, start with stories. start with those experiences. The authentic, real, raw stories, they kind of are the starting point to any conversation. And again, that helps you kind of break that barrier ki, this is just a talk, to I want to take something from this conversation, ki mujhe ek takeaway chahiye. Because if you just go ahead with data, of course data is extremely important, but data comes when people are listening. When you share accurate data derived from a proper source, people are listening when they're already feeling that this conversation is relatable to me. So start with stories. Storytelling is extremely important. Once you feel, yes, there is a connect between me and the audience, then share the data. Because sadly, data is very, very bad for a lot of stigmas, right? And we really need to work on it a lot more than we are doing. Matlab, of course, there is a lot of change happening. A lot of people in the country are doing so much, but there's so much more we need to do together. So, yeah, when you look at the data, it's alarming, but data ke saath stories is what makes it relatable, more real, and more authentic as well.
Okay, so you have built a strong presence on LinkedIn, where many people struggle to express themselves authentically. Me myself, being an introvert, I like don't feel to express that much. What's your philosophy when it comes to building a voice online?
Great. I'll give you two answers. One is, if you're an introvert, I would say it's easier for you to write text based content. And also because a lot of times all of us as introverts are also more comfortable in the written word. हमें ऐसा लगता है that when we write down our feelings, it's less vulnerable, but we're also conveying everything we want without that awkwardness, right? So if you're an introvert, I would say content creation on text based platforms is great. And since you said what's the philosophy behind it, personally for me, it's always been, like I said, sharing my own experiences, sharing the voice that maybe I wanted when I was 18, and I felt ki maybe there's a lack, of the opinions, advice, experiences of an 18-year-old. So when I started creating content, I was like, I'm just going to share everything that's been a part of my journey, whether that was for personal branding, whether that was for content, whether that was for networking. Because again, when I started out, I didn't know anything about networking. It was to a point where when I went for my first networking event, I was so confident that I'm going to share my contact with everyone, I'm going to have great conversations, of course professionally, but I'm going to develop lots of professional connections. I talked to no one at all. I came back from that event sitting there for 2 hours having had zero conversations. And when I came back, I realized that nahi, this is much more about having meaningful conversations rather than just exchanging, cards. That will not take us anywhere. And so what I'm trying to say is, I just thought that my philosophy was very simple. I'll share my own experiences and I'll try to also share what worked and what didn't. So as real and authentic as it goes. And I tried to also cover a couple of niches because I felt that, again, my life is around multiple things and all of them are intersectional in their own way. So yeah, I didn't limit myself to one niche. I have 2 to 3 niches I kind of talk about, cover, and of course they are also interconnected to a great extent, but it's much more about you as a voice rather than one specific niche you are talking about. It is about if you are talking about something, and again, this is for all the introverts who might feel nervous about starting content. Don't let self-doubt come in the middle. I think start creating content, then figure out what works and what doesn't, and then stick to what you know best, and kind of carve your voice through that.
So, ma'am, you often talk about personal branding, networking, and soft skills, while you are also working, in a social impact wala field. So, do you think that these two worlds are more connected than like people often realize that they actually are?
Absolutely. I think you've answered it in your question also. They are very, very interconnected, and I'll not even limit it to just social impact, right? Anything and everything that we want to do. Whether you are a student, whether you're someone who wants to get into a corporate, whether you're someone who's passionate about social impact, whether you're someone who wants to work on your own thing, you want to run your own idea, whether you're simply someone who's kind of figured it out, but you still want to meet like minded people, build a community, all of this is deeply community based. हर चीज़ जो we want to do is also deeply community based. And when you say social impact, it's pure community based work, right? And personal branding, networking, and soft skills, all of them are also. Because when you're able to build a strong network, you're able to meet like-minded people and build that community and maybe collaborate to work for a community, right? When you have a strong personal brand, there's a sense of trust, and then you're able to build a community to work on the things that you want to. Soft skills, some of the most important soft skills are community based, whether that's team building, whether that's communication, whether that's adaptability, whether that's problem solving, all of that, essentially all of these things are very community led, right? So I think most people don't realize it, but personal branding, um, soft skills and networking, all of them are linked to everything that we want to do, whether that's social impact, whether you're a student who's figuring out the next thing that they want to do, whether you're an outstation person who just wants to network their way into creating a strong friend group, right? Anything and everything is deeply related to knowing how you can network well, whether that's professionally or whether that's for your own personal space. Personal branding, I've said this across all the sessions I've given, it's not about building a personal brand, it's about enhancing your personal brand. All of us, we are already personal brands. हम जो conversations lead करते हैं, हम जिन conversations में होते हैं, the topics we talk about, topics we are passionate about, they already create our personal brand. And unintentionally, that personal brand is also very public. So the 10 people that know you, or the 20 people that know you, or the 2,000 people who know you in college, all of them already consider you a personal brand. Ab, what we need to do is enhance that personal brand and make it more meaningful for us, right? That's personal branding. It's, and again, this is a very famous quote about personal branding. Personal branding is about what people know about you when you are not in the room. What is a conversation that people will hold about you when you are not there to correct them, right? So वो personal brand बहुत intentional बनाने का conversation is much more important than how do I create one, because like I said, we're already a personal brand. And soft skills, like I said, very important in specifically this time when there is so much uncertainty with AI. Those soft skills become much more important because they are the things that make you human, right? So yeah, all of it is closely connected, and social impact may much more than people realize. Yes.
So you were one of the youngest coaches and panelists in Delhi's government's business plaster program. What does it feel like to be like in a room full of like old people and you are the youngest? So how are you taken so seriously, and how is it like? How was your experience there?
I think for the young wala part, a lot of us will be in rooms where we are the youngest person. And I tell this to a lot of people very often ki, number one, if you are there, make sure your voice is heard. Because if you are the youngest person in the room, they did see something in you, right? So make sure your voice is heard in that room, even if it means saying, yes, I'm the youngest and maybe I have more ideas relevant to this time, right? Because that's something that a lot of young people, me included, right, we would feel nervous about sharing because we feel, oh my god, there are so many much more experienced people in the room. But that's kind of, you know, the mindset that you'll build along the way ki nahi, if I'm the youngest in this room, I need to make sure I also share my opinions. It will take some time. You might feel nervous, you might feel uncomfortable, but take it step by step. And trust me, there are so many people who are much more experienced, much more knowledgeable, have, you know, a lifetime of experience, who want to mentor you. So it's about finding the right people who you can take guidance from. You can say, yes, I'm young, but I'm also very adaptive to learning. I also want to share my opinions, but I'm ready to get mentored and work on a collaborative thing. Because this was a very similar thing for me when I started out my, you know, when I got my first mentor. So I was creating content on LinkedIn. A very senior person reached out to me and she said, let's get on a coffee chat. Coffee chat is a virtual 10-15 minute chat where we just discuss life and, you know, kind of, again, network. And after that conversation, she said, you know what, I love to mentor you. And in my mind, I was thinking, but why would you want to mentor me? Why do you want to waste your time? And again, your net worth is so, you know, it's massive. So it's very important for you to spend each minute very carefully, right? And usme I was like, why do you want to mentor me for free? And that's when I realized a lot of times we think people don't want to help us, but a lot of times there are many much more experienced people who are ready to help you. You just need to find them. So if you're in rooms where you are the youngest, it's the best place to be in because you are going to learn so much from that room, provided you have that adaptive mindset and provided you're able to seek out one or two people in that room who you can say, ठीक है, आप मुझे guide करो, how can I develop, and I'll bring the young intergenerational voice to it. That's one. And second is, a lot of times age is actually an advantage. Um, and you just need to make sure you realize that, because we think age is a disadvantage. Yes, there is age bias that sadly exists in many rooms still, but if you're able to create that, but you have to be intentional and strategic with it, but if you're able to do that, then age becomes an advantage very easily. So I would say age ka advantage is much more important and much more, from a growth perspective, much more relevant. So yeah, just find the right mentors for you who can kind of support you in that journey, and make sure that you're intentional with age becoming an advantage.
It is so interesting to know, you can use your age and do something productive. So you have been recognized in many incredible ways, from Asia's 100 women power leaders to being featured on Times Square. So what do these moments feel like for you?
I think they are great, of course. There's a lot of gratitude that comes with it, but a lot of responsibility as well, because in that moment you're kind of introspecting on, wow, this just happened. But take a step back and also think, okay, this happened. How do I make sure I continue to implement, the learnings and the access to people that I get from this to my work, and I continue it forward. So, both a lot of gratitude, but a lot of responsibility and a lot of perspective. So, yes.
Part of global summits like Second World Summit for Social Development in Doha. What difference does youth, especially young women, bring to these conversations?
Oh, great. What a great question. So, I would say, I'll give you, since you asked Second World Summit for Social Development, what I realized in Doha is that a lot of people and a lot of young people had come in. The best thing about that is कि एक intergenerational or एक intersectional conversation होता है, because a lot of young people are working on very different things, right? Number one, at global summits like this, it's very, very important that young people are a part of it, young women are a part of it, and all communities, lesser, the marginalized communities are a part of it as much as possible. Because again, number one, that brings an inclusive lens to it. Number two, it brings conversations, challenges, issues, voices that otherwise are unheard of, right? So again, from an intercultural inclusive perspective, it's very important. And thirdly, it also helps make sure कि you are able to also interact with people who are working in different spaces, but you can then collaborate with them to create that change. Because again, in Doha, there were so many young people who came working in very, very different spaces. And the intersectional conversation was great. And again, it happened in November 2025. So has been only 3-4 months, but there's so much that has happened beyond those conversations as well. So while we met there, it's really led to so much of discussion around collaboration, around global collaborations beyond the event. So I think it's very, very important for young people to be a part of conversations like these. And I do think that there's a long way to go for young people to be across every decision making table. There's a long, long way to go for that, and I hope that that's the reality in the next 7 to 8 years. But it's happening. It's becoming better, and it's also going beyond tokenism, which is great. But again, long way to go.
So, ma'am, beyond the recognitions or publicly being recognized, when do you personally feel that you have created some meaningful change, or any incident when this came to your mind? Yes, I have done something for the society now. Like this, any particular incident or any moment when you realize that yes, you have done something concrete.
I think it's very, very small moments. So I'll give you 2-3 examples. They look smaller, but they are very meaningful. Uh, there was one session that we conducted. Jiske baad there was a message that we received from a mother, and she had shared that what you shared about periods and menstruation with my child. He came back and we had a chat. Basically, it was the boy went back and had a chat with his family at the dinner table. And this was a conversation on periods, a young boy talking to his family on, आज मैंने क्या सीखा, right? And when she reached out to me, and she was just saying that she was just sharing her opinion on, this was great and this is something that should have happened long time ago. This should be something that all boys learn about. And that was definitely a moment where we felt, great, this is going in the right direction, but again, we need to do a lot more. But yeah, that's a conversation that kind of stayed with me because we wanted to make sure periods conversation में boys are a very important part to it. Because again, yes, it is very important to educate young girls and women about it, but they're also a part of the process, right? They are going to have periods anyways. So number one, yes, breaking the ice there की lack of awareness हटे and उन्हें भी समझ आए कि ठीक है, this is very normal. This is a very normal process, and here's what you could do about it. But also to make sure boys are a part of the conversation so that, again, they can go back and make this a very normal conversation in their families, in their friends. Because when we had that session, we told the boys, ki, go back home. We also did a pad distribution drive at the end of the session, and we'd handed over pads to everyone, to all the attendees. And we told the boys ki theek hai, you can't use the pads, but go back, give it to your mom or your sister, and yeah, see when they use it every month, and then you can, share that you know about this process, and it's very normal. So yeah, that was one thing that stayed. And of course, many moments where people just say, this was a conversation that made me feel less alone, or this was a moment where I felt like there are 10 other people that face the same challenge, so maybe it's normal. So I can actually share my opinion on it. And this has happened a lot of times across mental health conversations, because we realized, like I was saying initially, right, the overgeneralization conversation is also very important. Mental health में ये बहुत ही prominent है. You would see a lot of people saying, oh, but I feel so depressed. That's not depression, right? You might just be feeling sad. Depression is a condition. And sadly, because mental health continues to be a taboo or a stigma, उसमें 3 segregations हो गई हैं. And actually I'll cover 2, which are 2 opposite ends to the spectrum. One is the lack of awareness. People don't know what mental health is, and they're like, ये तो कुछ नहीं होता. This is just, someone seeking attention, or someone might say, I don't know what it is, so I'll not consider it valid, right? That's the lack of awareness bit. And the second bit is the overgeneralization, which is because इतना ज़्यादा mental health and depression पे बात हो रही है, it's almost, it's getting overgeneralized, where every alternate person is saying, oh, but I feel depressed. That's not depression. If you felt sad for half an hour, that's not depression, that's just sadness, right? So the use of words in a very, very normal way, which kind of defeats the purpose of the very meaning of the word, right? Because जिनको genuinely depression feel हो रहा है, they are not able to raise their voices simply because there is so much overgeneralization. So yeah, I think even those conversations, we've tried to kind of work on both spectrums, make sure that expert-led conversations happen, so that if someone has a question, if they have a doubt, it's breaking the ice through a true sense, rather than just saying, अच्छा, this is valid, अब तुम उसका कुछ भी करो. Right? It's much more of, let's go deep into this. This is what happens. This is what you do. This is the professional help you seek. Or this is absolutely normal. So yeah, we've tried to kind of cover those. And again, all the people who reach out after that yes, I feel less alone, or yes, thank you for this conversation, that this really made sense. Yeah, they stay. They definitely stay.
So you are a published poet, and you have described poetry as your space for mental clarity. What does writing give you that speaking and leading does not?
I think for me, writing has always been the place where I used to share my genuine opinions. Because again, when I was an introvert, it was very difficult to share my voice to people. Ki, what will they think? There's a sense of judgment. There's a fear of, am I saying it right? Am I being very open about this? And that awkward energy, right? Because when you're an introvert, I think the written word is much more convenient. Ki, I'll just write it down. I'll share my opinions on paper rather than to people. So yeah, I think that's been something that stayed with me throughout. And yeah, I just love to write and kind of share my opinions across, whether that's through content, whether that's through stories, whether that's just writing poetry, or even like short stories, all of it. So it's kind of my way to like share all of my opinions down. And it stayed with me from when I was an introvert to now when I'm more comfortable talking to people. But it's been consistent, and I hope it stays.
So, ma'am, you have spoken a lot about mental health for others and how it is a stigma now in India also, especially. So, what does taking care of mental health looks like for you?
For me, mine, honestly speaking, it's just about creating boundaries. So for me, I try to create boundaries for myself, not with other people, but for myself on, am I feeling low about this? I need to step back and create a boundary and take a break. Or it could sometimes be just weekly check-ins with myself. And I know a lot of people try to do this, and they feel, they try to implement. Again, a lot of people listening to the conversation would be like, okay, I'll try this as well. It's not about implementing something that other people do. It's about finding your own balance. कि अगर मुझे लगता है मुझे daily half an hour का break चाहिए to just, you know, recharge, do that. For me, I realized it's not daily, it's more weekly. I want 1 hour in an entire week where I'm absolutely doing nothing, not even scrolling. Just taking a break and just really recharging, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's just sitting and doing nothing, just thinking about the entire week, or no work essentially. Or it could be something like twice a month. Whatever feels right for you, do that. Because again, you would listen to someone and feel, this is what I'm going to do. And when you implement it, you'll realize this doesn't work for me. So be very, very, essentially, mental health is very subjective. And again, it also goes very timely with productivity. A lot of people will say, chalo, to-do list banate hain. When you actually make it, you'll realize this doesn't work for me. To-do lists work really great for me, and it's also closely linked to the mental health question on when I want to take a break, I write down everything I have to do, push it to the next day if it's a possibility, and I just take a break that entire day. Whenever I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed, that works really well for me as well, yes.
So, do you ever feel the pressure of being a change maker? How do you deal with that expectation?
I see it's a overwhelming feeling sometimes, but of course, it gives you the opportunity to meet a lot of like-minded change makers, right? So pros and cons hai. Of course, there are some moments where you feel so overwhelmed because with that tag of being a young change maker, there's a lot of expectation on this person has it figured out, or they are extremely ready, or they're ready to implement the next thing. And you kind of have to take a step back from that overwhelming tag because you feel ki no, this is maybe defeating the purpose that I am working for or diluting that impact, right? But at the same time, there are a lot of pros to actually getting the opportunity to meet other like-minded people, young change makers working in the same space where you're like, yes, let's collaborate, let's, create more impact at a deeper level, to more spaces. So pros and cons to both, but I often see it as something which is more positive.
So you have identified yourself as a feminist and an environmentalist, often openly. So have these identities ever come with any personal or professional cost?
No, not really. So I would say when you are very, very open about the choices that you make, right, it just gives you more clarity. And similar to the previous question on, there would be some disagreements with people, but those are also conversations, right? Where people say, okay, maybe I don't agree with this conversation, but personally, because that is also the space that I work in, it actually gives me more clarity on what next. How do I implement this further? How do I collaborate with people? And again, because we work very deeply on feminism, on climate change, on environmental action, it's kind of helped us to connect with more people who work in the similar space to essentially create more impact. So, not from the lens of ki disagreements nahi hote, but those disagreements are not always negative. They're just conversations on different perspectives. So, not bad at all.
Okay, so before we move to rapid fire, is there something that you haven't done and that keeps you pushing forward?
Oh, there's so much. I'm very, very self-aware of there's a long way to go in terms of what we want to do and, how much the impact can be. So, nahi, there's a long way to go. It's just what keeps us going and what keeps me going is always the why. And as cliche as that sounds, people will say, everybody knows the why is important. But it's very, very important to actually remember that why every now and then. Because whenever someone says, why did you start? And I share my journey and that conversation that I overheard, it kind of reminds me of, yes, we need to continue forward because can every person talk about periods right now openly with their families? No. So continue forward. So, very, very clear on ki there's a long way to go. And there's so much we need to do also, yes.
So, ma'am, let's have a rapid fire round right now.
Okay, one taboo topic you think India needs to talk about right now?
Mental health.
Any one word you can describe today's youth?
Today's youth, authentically themselves.
A book or speech that you would recommend?
Oh, there are so many. Acha. I would say Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. So I'll give a one sentence. I know this is a rapid fire, but this is a book I read during my English honors degree. Great book to kind of reflect on where the world is going. And at a deeper level, what will stay with you is kind of the silence and the quietness with which it almost says, and again, you'll have to read the book to really, kind of think about this, but it leaves you with the thought of how many times people simply accept the predetermined systems around them. So, Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go.
If not a social entrepreneur, what would Palak Khanna be?
Oh, definitely something in psychology or literature.
One thing you wish someone had told you at 16.
Um, Find the right mentors for yourself. Networking is one of the most important skills. Start early, make those mistakes early, and network and build that net worth for yourself and that network for yourself as well.
A leader you deeply admire?
Oh, there are so many. Dia Mirza, maybe. Dia Mirza, yes.
Okay, so complete this sentence. The world will change when.
The world will change when we stop waiting to be ready and we take action for the things that we say matter.
So, ma'am, today's conversation has given us a rare window into what it really means to build something from a place of genuine conviction, not for just recognition, but or not for recognition, not for CV or resume, but because the world around you demanded it. Like the conversation you overheard, and you realized that yes, I need to work on it. So, from breaking taboos to building communities, from the stage to the classroom, your journey is the proof that age is never any barrier to the impact. So, before we close, is there any one final message you would like to leave with young dreamers who feel like their voice is too small to matter, or to the audience who is listening, and most of the audience might be of our age only? So, any one final message you want to share with all of them?
I think never think that your voice is small. I think all of our voices are really, really, really not just big but important. So start before you get into that cycle of self doubt. Start early. Again, like I was saying, try to network because it's one of the most important skills. And yeah, I don't think anything can stop you if you have that clarity of purpose and thought, and you stick to your why.
Thank you so much, Palak, for your honesty, your warmth, and your time. It was truly a privilege to host you on TED-a-Tete. And to our listeners, if this conversation moved you, please share it because the best way to break the conversation is to keep going. Stay tuned for more stories that matter. Thank you.